Hello, this is Alan Gassman, and I am very pleased to show you our Section 7520 and applicable federal rate table for EstateView software. I open up EstateView software and I click on 7520 and AFR rate table at the bottom left. And in yellow, this tells me that for April 2024, the Section 7520 rate, which is what we use for certain planning vehicle calculations, is 5.2%. In March, it was 5%. In February, it was 4.8%. Now, for charitable arrangements, you can generally use the best of those three percentages. For non-charitable arrangements, you have to use the percentage that applies for the month that the arrangement is set up. This also shows me the short-term applicable federal rate, which is used for notes of up to 3 years, mid-term applicable federal rate, which is used for notes of more than 3 years and up to 9 years, and the long-term applicable federal rate, which is used for notes of more than 9 years. So you can see here that if I wanted to do a 9-year note, it would be at 4.25% interest. If I wanted to do a 20-year note, it would be at 4.4% interest. Now, strangely enough, even though you are using a note that probably pays interest only and doesn't compound, you are to use the short-term semi-annual rate, not the annual rate. That makes no sense, but tax law does not always make sense. That's just according to the Treasury regulation. Please also note that when you sell an asset in exchange for a note, you can use the lowest of this month's and the previous 2 months. So if I was going to do a 9-year note in April of 2024, I would be able to have it bear interest at 3.94%. Now, when you loan money to somebody, the Treasury Department expects that you'll use 4.25% on a 9-year note. But am I actually selling money in exchange for the note? That may not be exactly what you would expect. We have the rates going back to January 2022. At some point in the future, we'll add a lot more history. Please note that the 7520 rate is approximately 120% of the midterm applicable federal rate, and that these rates come about generally by comparison to what Treasury bills are yielding at any given month. There is a different kind of note called a self-canceling installment note. That is covered in a different module that I will just show you now for your convenience, that if I go to the skin/conventional button and click on it, and it tells me my Section 7520 rate, the lowest of this month and the last 2 months applicable federal rates for a long-term note. And then let's just say that I have a 70-year-old expected to live under the tables 15.4 years, and I'm going to do a 15-year note, interest only, that's going to balloon. And the note is going to cancel on death. If the client dies within the 15 years, because the note cancels on death, the note amount is not subject to estate tax, so that's a big advantage. What interest rate will the note need to bear to take into account the risk of death? In other words, if I'm going to do this arrangement with my daughter, she's going to have to pay me a higher interest rate to take into account that if I die during the 15 years, she won't have to pay me at all. I click to see results. It shows me the information that I just fed into it, and it tells me that I will have to pay not only the regular interest rate, but an additional interest of 4.7327% for a total of 8.8727%. My annual payments on $1 million note will therefore be $88,727,000. Now, another way I could do this, I'll click duplicate, and I could also just pay more principal instead of interest, instead of grossing up the interest. So now, under the same scenario, loaning $1 million, they would agree, my daughter would agree to pay me back $1,669,000 at 4.14% interest. Her payments are going to be lower each year, but when it balloons in year 15, she's going to have to pay me $1,669,000 instead of $1 million. Well, if I'm not expected to live 15 years, but I do need to be of reasonable health at the time that I enter into the note, that may be a better deal. Or what if the note is not self-canceling? I will click duplicate, and I will now set up note number 3, and it will be a conventional note, so it will not cancel on death. In order to see what a regular note is, I'll click on Pro, and then it gives me the option to make note number 3 conventional, not self-canceling. So now, if I use a conventional note and I want to pay interest only, I can see that the interest rate is going to be 4.41%. The payments are going to be $41,400 a year. And I can even calculate the estate tax savings from the note arrangement based upon various circumstances. So the discussion here was on the AFR and 75/20 rate table. I hope that this has been helpful. We welcome your questions, comments, and suggestions at EstateView. Thank you very much for using it or trying EstateView software. Have a fantastic rest of your day. But how could it be better than after that tour?